Hello, thanks for joining in. So today I'm super excited that the Democratic Party is effectively uniting behind the candidacy of Joe Biden, who's someone very experienced in being part of a White House owing to his 8 years as Obama's vice president. But what I've put in my headline is Bernie's left ventricular ejection fraction and why it's important. So let me tell you a little bit about what a left ventricular ejection fraction is. It's a measurement for how much blood is pumped out of your heart with each sequential squeeze of or contraction of your heart muscle. So what's typically measured is what's pumped out of your left ventricle, which is just a section of your heart. And if that fraction is weaker, it tells you that there's heart damage. And it's a figure that doctors would often give in explaining somebody's prospects for survival after a heart attack. So you could say, yep, their ejection fraction's doing well. They're not likely to die in the near future. So if we look at some other things we've got at the moment, some of the symptoms of having a poor left ventricular ejection fraction is being short of breath. So I have video taken from today that shows Bernie struggling with breathing as he's talking. Nope, I'm talking about Bernie's shortness of breath, suggesting possible imminent decline in health for what's a significant job. Also in context of Bernie's communism and frequent deriding of the establishment, meaning the Democratic volunteers, candidates, people who've worked for that particular party that has been the party serving America's diverse communities for a long time. So yes, it's likely that Bernie's not up to the job, as well as being not up to the task of winning an electoral college victory, which is, as we now know, the only meaningful victory because of the way America's electoral system's been set up. Yep, no, Biden's a great candidate and he's very unifying. So we can see by the fact that Pete Buttigieg is endorsing Biden, Amy Klobuchar is endorsing Biden, all of those patriotic acts that have come forward to support something for the good of the country, to help America take back its democracy from fascism, which is a very difficult task and it does need as much support as possible. So I urge everybody to look to Beto O'Rourke. He's also tonight endorsed Biden. At all the multitude of endorsements and donations that are happening as a consequence of a state with a significantly diverse population, i.e. Lots of people of color in South California, as opposed to the dominating whiteness of Ohio and New Hampshire. South Carolina has decisively voted for Joe Biden in that every county was won by Joe Biden. Yes, can we mute the Bernie people? I don't need that tonight. I'm quite happy and excited. And I will share with you, first of all, I'll share with you the footage of Beto endorsing Biden and explaining why. And he references decency. Yes, darling? Okay, well, you try and sort it out nicely, sweetheart, because mummy's literally live recording. Okay, so let's go here, click there, maybe make it a little bit bigger. And thank you for appreciating. Oh, you definitely mute the Bernie people. We don't need that.
We need somebody
Thanks, sweetheart.
who can beat Donald Trump. The man in the White House today
After the video,
poses an existential threat to this country, to our democracy, to free
Thank you,
and fair
Brian.
elections. And we need somebody who can beat him. And in Joe Biden, we have that man. We have someone who, in fact, is the antithesis of Donald Trump. Joe Biden is decent. He's kind.
Could you close that door?
He's caring. He's empathetic.
Okay, so that was good. Decent, kind, empathetic, the antithesis to Donald Trump, who is effectively an existential threat to American democracy and consequently to global democracy and consequently to global hopes of not falling into apocalyptic chaos as a consequence of climate change. Sweetheart, you're going to lose a stick if you keep that up. You can borrow Mummy's fan if you want, but you have to go and sort out your problems yourself. You have to negotiate with your brother, but you can borrow that. You being good? Take. Okay. All right. So yeah, somebody says, can I please say something good about Elizabeth Warren? Yes, her candidacy may be helping restrict support for Bernie, although I don't really know much about the truth of such an assertion. Elizabeth Warren's got a lot of good qualities, but she's not the only person who foresaw the trouble with the banks. She's not the only person who's very articulate and intelligent. And she is, however, a person with very low support from a significant base of the Democratic Party, which is to say voters of color. She doesn't have support there. Elizabeth Warren supporters can keep ignoring that, but it's a critical factor in the low likelihood of her becoming the chosen candidate for the Democratic Party. And what do you really want to accomplish with your vote? Do you want to strike a blow for Hillary Clinton? Are you being fed by your emotions around the narrative? I mean, a narrative with significant validity of the sexism of the 2016 election, in which Bernie candidates ignored Hillary Clinton and her progressive policies, and the fact that it's not just presidents that get things done. There's no point blaming Obama and Hillary for the fact that Republicans stymied progressive policies in the US for a number of years, because Democrats turned out to vote in a president, but didn't turn out in comparable numbers for the midterm elections. So when America gets over its emotional problem of falsely blaming a president for problems at a congressional level and problems at a Democratic-based turnout level, because Dems don't reliably turn out in the same way that Republicans do, because Republican voters often view their votes as being necessary to protect their property from Democrats who they presume will take all of their money that they've earned. And I can be sympathetic to that because, do you know what? People on the left often make broad statements about how little taxes the wealthy pay. I've learned a little bit more that there's, a reasonable amount of inheritance tax, etc. Yes, the American wealthy have a lot of money, but American ingenuity and American inventions and success and intelligence and American excellence attract a lot of investment. So it's not just a case of the wealthy being wealthy because they steal from the poor. It's a case of, yes, American policies have lurched away from worker protections, etc., but people on the left sometimes sound as if they want to fix that by just only taking money away from the wealthy. And really, the middle class needs protection as well. So yes, Biden certainly brings a very healing energy to the debate stage in that he's been advising people to watch the steps as they go up on stage to endorse him. Let's see, I want to share some other things with you, but I might have to tell my children to behave. Oh no, that's playful. It's fine. Okay. So the next thing I want to visit is the footage of Bernie being breathless that I was speaking of. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I found it. All right. Okay. Click back on here. Add to stream. We're going to listen to a little bit of Bernie and watch his shoulders, watch his breathing.
For joining us in the fight for real change in this country.
Senator, do you believe that some of the moderates in the race have had discussions internally about consolidating their vote in order
to urge them to joining us in the fight for real change in this country.
Senator, do you believe?
Okay, so do we need to watch that again? So shoulders heaving, big exhale as he tries to get a breath between questions. So that's taken a few hours ago. All right, what's the comments? Hello. So yes, I'll take you to, so we'll read a little bit about left ventricular ejection fractions. That was an important piece of information that was not shared by Bernie's doctors. So you know how he said he wasn't going to release, oops, wrong one. You can tell your brother he's lost a sticker, okay, baby? You tell.
You lost the sticker.
All right. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. Here we go. Google search on left ventricular ejection fraction. What are some of the symptoms of a low ejection fraction? Signs and symptoms of low ejection fraction include shortness of breath or inability to exercise, swelling of the feet and lower legs, fatigue and weakness. So while you're looking at that, hang on. Oops, here we go. New comments. It is a long ejection cycle. All right. So I don't know if you could hear me while I was reading the ejection fraction. Okay, tell him he needs to do that. Okay, I'm going to share something else. Okay. How many minutes does it have left, darling? 12. Okay. You can't, sweetheart, you did have that before. Change it to what she wants. No. Okay. Oh, wow. It's going to be 5 stickers lost soon. Sort it out, guys. Okay, I have to stop the video now, and guess Mummy's going to be pretty cross about that. All right. All right. So Sanders promised he would release comprehensive medical records. He hasn't. But, shall we listen to a practicing cardiologist? That might be something we can do.
If you got 5 stickers off him, he would be landing on 4 stickers. Mommy, he just turned the TV off.
That's okay.
Putting on Black and Pony.
Okay. So here we go. Exercise capacity average for a man his age, but there was a key piece of information missing. Oh, let me just pause that. The letters that Bernie released from his medical records, which weren't records, they were letters from his doctors. They do not mention his ejection fraction, which is the amount of blood that's ejected from the heart with each beat. That has usually been linked as a prognosticator, i.e. a predictor, as to how someone will do long term. That seems to be the one piece of information that was not included. And I suppose that would be why he did not release his medical records. So cherry-picked picture of his health. And the omission, I agree with them that it's particularly troubling given that he previously said he would release comprehensive information about his health. So does that make sense to people? That's why I'm, yes, motherhood during the rise of fascism is hard work. Okay, I'll just pause this for a second because I'm going to go talk to my children. Okay.
Oh, I feel so bad. I feel so bad.
Is the iPad out of battery? You can go read a book for a little bit, Evie. Mommy has to finish the video. Otherwise, you go to your room and you have to stay there for
I feel so bad.
Jamie, you can go to that room and read your sister's story. You can go read your sister some of that. Do it now, please. Okie dokie. Okay, so yes, as Brian's pointing out, the ejection fraction after a myocardial infarction is an indicator of the extent of heart damage. Oh, we're watching ads on him. So someone says it's a sad day when the Republican Party is more democratic than the DNC. That sounds like a troll person, and we should mute them if that's at all possible. Okay, I'm going to close that or scroll down a little bit more. Let's have a look. Yes, Trump's letters, we should remember, were particularly ridiculous, and the doctor ended up publicly admitting that Trump dictated what he was to write in those letters. We should remember that as Trump's approach to things, that he bullies, intimidates, bribes, etc., and that's one of the ways fascism works, is by attracting people into that orbit of inappropriately wielded power. So what did McCain do? He invited a group of reporters to view more than 1,000 pages of his medical records. Interesting. So Americans seem to have high expectations of transparency. Sanders isn't living up to that standard. And it's important to remember that. Okay, so I'll close that. Let's talk a little bit about the coronavirus, because to me, it's a little bit like a race between Super Tuesday and the spread of the virus, in that we need people to turn out to vote for Super Tuesday. And I think it's going to get to the point soon where the virus has spread in enough cities, and the degree of the Trump administration sabotage of American preparedness will start to really show up and be a problem for people. So Brian's saying two cases in your area. Interesting. So I know last night coronavirus Florida was trending. It's in New York. People might not all realize the exponential pace of transmission because of the high contagion rate of the virus. I will point out that, yep, washing with soap and water is still a great strategy, because the virus is lipid enveloped, meaning it has a fatty coating, and when you wash your hands with a substance that destroys fat, you're destroying the virus. So soap is a good substance against the virus. I'd also like to say that yes, the US has been inadequately testing. It's not reporting how many people are being tested anymore on the CDC website. Obviously, there are some variabilities involved in trying to collect data from around the country, but at the same time, the CDC website just isn't even going to try anymore. And considering the amount of fascistic unitary executive control that Trump is exerting over the CDC, it seems likely that Trump is sabotaging the reporting of the CDC and possibly a mixture of incompetence and sabotage. Incompetence is often part of fascistic totalitarian regimes because their energies and their focus is not on getting results. Their energies and their focus is just on pandering to the emotional vulnerabilities of people with superiority complexes that have felt mistreated, or people suffering genuine hardship. But a lot of the support for Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump is people who just think they should have more than they have and have an overprotective sense around what they do have. So people who've been fed a focus by Fox News that the left wants to come and take away all your money and distribute it to people of color. Even if the fear of people of color isn't particularly pronounced, it's fear of being overtaxed. So we should talk about that, because a good way to deflate overhyped fears is to acknowledge any core half-truths mixed in with those embellished fears. So fascists embellish fears. They build on under-resolved trust issues that were created in the wake of 9/11, and fascists capitalize and exploit that, exploit fear and exploit concerns. So if we go back to what people see on Fox News, yes, Fox News often represents the far left of the Democratic Party as being what the Democratic Party is in its entirety. They misrepresent Obamacare as being socialism. They misrepresent the socialized nature of American infrastructure. They forget that that's a form of socialism. We need a new word for it. Just socialized infrastructure needs a word that's less contaminated with decades of toxic propaganda. But at the same time, I'm not caring too much about how to rehabilitate socialism at this point, because America is getting to choose between someone who's obviously an avowed socialist, Bernie Sanders, and someone who is more associated with moderation. Although he still has progressive goals and progressive policies in mind, he still wants Americans to all have access to healthcare options. I think Buttigieg's plan was to just expand, for there to be a public option. So you can have Medicare for all who want it. Medicare for all who want it. And Joe's probably going to end up with something similar to that as well. I don't know. I should know. What are Joe Biden's healthcare plans? Ultimately, I know that Americans don't vote so much on policy as for a person whose language resonates with who they believe will look after them. So the person who speaks to their pre-existing prejudices and their pre-existing understandings of how the world works, speaks to their value system, is someone who they say, I ally myself with that person. They will look after people like me. And Biden has a broad tent for that. Decent people, people who want to include and help people of color. So he's worked well with President Obama. Somebody who understands that there is a division in the branches of government in America, that you don't just have the executive branch, the presidency, you have the legislative branch, which makes and passes the laws for the president to sign, and that so many Americans have amnesia about what is accomplished through their presidential vote. And Democratic voters have that amnesia in a more pronounced way than Republicans, because Republicans turn up protectively. Conservatives like to conserve things and to conserve their wealth and what they see as the fabric of society. They turn up in midterm elections. They turn up more consistently than idealistic Dem voters who turn up for presidential elections at a higher rate. Have I expressed that properly? Republican voters turn up more consistently. Democratic voters turn up for presidential elections and have less turnout, lower turnout rates for midterms. There you go. So, yes, people who rail against capitalism are not people who are creating a broad coalition with a bunch of people in America who are employed by capitalism, who owe their families bread and butter and vegetables and fruit and protein sources to the system of capitalism. And the people who suffer as a consequence of under-regulated capitalism. What, darling? You want to make cookies? I know, but do I look like I'm in a cookie ready making state? We can put that on the agenda, but also your sugar quota's kind of been met. yes, wealth inequalities certainly enhance electoral problems, because if you can buy so many ads that you get a Supreme Court justice on board who then makes a Citizens United decision. Sweetie, you're going to lose a sticker with that behavior. That's not okay. That's not okay. Okay, you're going to also lose the opportunity to make cookies later if you do this as well. Take that away, please. Thank you. And we don't have any choc chips for the cookies either. So we could make plain cookies, but we don't have any chocolate chips.
Mommy, we don't need chocolate chips. We might just cut the chocolate, which we have into little pieces.
Oh, chop the chocolate we do have into little pieces.
We should put them in the cookies.
That's true. That's a good idea. We could just chop up the chocolate. Okay. I hear you. It was my birthday recently and I ate too much cake, which I regret, but yeah, I'll still make cookies and just not try and eat any of the cookies, because I need to work on my health. And we've got coronavirus circulating, so we need to do exercise to keep stretching our lung capacity in the advent of any highly contagious disease continuing its spread. So we're on the mitigation pathway. The same with Trump. We're trying to mitigate against the rise of fascism in the US. A lot of people say the intuitive answer to that is socialism, but you still have to work with the prejudices, sometimes the slightly sexist tendencies of some voters. And I don't even blame sexism for people's failure to adopt Elizabeth Warren as a candidate, as broadly as Elizabeth Warren supporters would like Elizabeth Warren to be adopted. She has lots of good qualities, but being president isn't just a vote for the person you think is the most qualified. It's a vote for the person who you think has the interests of your group at heart. Now, Elizabeth Warren says she's a capitalist who wants to just strengthen the guardrails on American capitalism. But for a lot of people, she's associated with extreme measures that might jeopardize their, not their healthcare, but jeopardize their family's finances in terms of how much wealth they are compelled to pay. And you know that under Trump's economic mismanagement, the middle class have been being more squeezed. Trump talks a lot of hooey about how great the economy is, but it hasn't been that great. And people in blue states have certainly been punished by the abolition of various measures you can use on your tax to offset certain things by claiming you've paid state taxes, etc. So people in blue states, the middle class in blue states, have been harder hit. We don't need to turn off those voters by having someone aligned with rapid change like Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren, even though the direction of the change is laudable in many ways. Sure, reclaim some worker protections, reclaim America's health system to function more for the actual people and not as a out of control industry. That system of generating profit at the expense of sick people is often very morally suspect. People who've traveled overseas and obtained amazing healthcare in other countries are often well placed to push back against arguments that America's private healthcare system works. There's clearly a lot of problems with it. Obamacare started to address some of those problems, and Joe Biden promises to extend that solution. And if you vote for him, and if people are enthusiastic enough to vote for him and the down ballot candidates, then you could get a Dem majority Congress in the House and even maybe the Senate that could help those legislative goals be realized. Yes, Donald Trump won a lot of counties with very sparse populations, which is why Donald Trump's actual victory was as small as 77,000 votes, winning him the Electoral College victory through that margin of victory in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. But overall, you should know that Trump lost the popular vote by close to 3 million votes. And a lot of people even now are very aware that he's corrupt. A lot of people now are very aware that he's an unindicted criminal who's not just running for re-election, he's running to stay out of prison. And having that type of motivation, that level of desperation in a president is very dangerous, and a lot of people recognize that danger. So yes, we know that Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, was passing internal polling data from the Republican Party to a Russian former KGB agent, Konstantin Kilimnik. That was established by Mueller's report, and we haven't forgotten that report, conducted by a Republican former head of the FBI. And as much as Trump derides him and derides that investigation, he's done that all his life. Deride the law, deride the authorities, blackmail, intimidate, and bribe journalists so that they didn't accurately report on his business failures. They didn't report how deep he was in the red in the late 1980s. There's a story published on that in the Washington Post. Let's have a look, because I remember what the article is called. It's called Saving Face. Washington Post. Share that on screen just so that you can see the article, because it's a pattern of behavior with Donald Trump. We should discuss it. Saving Face: How Donald Trump Silenced the People Who Could Expose His Business Failures. The reason why it is important to discuss this is because it's been shown with focus groups that some information which often changes people's minds away from supporting Donald Trump is the revelation that he's not a self-made man, that he inherited millions of dollars from his father and didn't really emphasize that the myth of Donald Trump as a successful businessman is a myth. So how did Donald Trump, a self-serving promoter who lost billions of dollars for his investors, convince the world that he's a financial genius? It wasn't just by fabricating tales of his success. It was also by bullying and silencing people who could have stopped those deceits, particularly reporters and Wall Street analysts, forcing all but a very few into a conspiracy of silence. Now, I show you the details of that again if you want to look up this article. It's called Saving Face, published on the Washington Post. The reason why we need to note these strategies is because that's how Donald Trump will be treating medical professionals right now, people in the CDC, other health professionals, trying to bully and silence people out of speaking up about the degree to which sabotaging America's pandemic response units is going to serve the American people very poorly in the days and weeks to come. So no, Trump did not create the virus. Nobody's arguing that. Trump's tax cuts were mitigated by his cuts to other American services. So he was deriving less government revenue, giving money to corporations and wealthy people in terms of returning tax dollars to them, or at least not taking money from those people. And it didn't have the effect on business investment that he suggested it would have. It's a deficit economy that's been running, meaning the payment comes later down the track. So I saw an analogy pointing out that we've all seen houses decorated very beautifully on credit. That doesn't save the owner from financial ruin if they're overextended with their debt. So Trump overextended America in a fiscal sense, as many Republican presidents often do. So Jonathan Greenberg was the lead real estate wealth estimator for the Forbes 400 list in its early years. And he's honest here, exposing his own, I guess, laziness, because Trump rang him pretending to be John Barron, the chief financial officer of the Trump organization, and just flat out lied about Trump's wealth in order to put Trump on the Forbes list. And then banks assume the Forbes list has done its homework, and they gave Donald Trump loans without or put aside their concerns about his terrible business record. So Trump, Jonathan Greenberg, when the New York Times expose showed that Trump had lost $1.1 billion between 1985 and 1994, he called his old colleagues to find out, how did Trump keep this subterfuge in place 3 decades ago? When he'd lost $1 billion, how was he still selling himself at that point in time as an attractive person for investors? So I would also like to note at this point that Maggie Haberman, a journalist for the New York Times, used to write for. Are you hungry? Would you like a peanut butter and jam sandwich? Yeah? Okay. You can start to make one and I'll come help you. Okay. So I hope this is interesting to people still. Wall Street analysts witnessed a campaign of intimidation that began when Trump got one of them fired for accurately doubting his casino's abilities to pay off their debts. So the Taj Mahal that you know Trump bankrupted, he not only bankrupted the Taj Mahal, he intimidated journalists who were predicting that the Taj Mahal might not have the capacity to make money, to generate enough income to balance out the costs of building the Taj Mahal. So Trump was good at spinning mythology about himself. And people voted for him thinking, well, even if he's a liar, he's good at spinning a confident mythology. And that's what America needs to attract investment. And to a degree, they're right. Confident sounding people often do make a lot of money. Snake oil salesmen sell a lot of snake oil. It's not a reason to support them. And as Trump's snake oil gets more exposed, yes, darling? All right, well, do you want to say goodbye to the people? Don't come around to the camera, but you could just use your voice. You could say bye-bye. Do you want me to hold out I'll hold out the microphone for you over here. Wait a second. Don't come around this way too much. But I'm going to hold the microphone over towards you, but just hold on. I'm going to go here. Okay, I'm going to just let my daughter say goodbye. Yes, peanut butter and jam, or as jelly as Americans would say. Don't draw on my book, sweetie. That's not nice. Okay, now you want to say something? You want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Okay, do you want to say goodbye as well? Oh, sweetie, that would hurt people's ears. That wasn't nice.
Sorry.
I apologize. My son shouted right into the microphone. People listen to this with headphones on, darling, and a big shout into that would really hurt them.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, well, take care, everybody. I will not pass my children the microphone again next time. I've learned my lesson. Unless they, yeah, that was, I guess, playful. Do you want to try again and just say something lower? You could say, I'm having a great day, or I'm home from school sick. Nicely, not too loudly. Not too
Bye.
close. Okay. It's good to learn our lessons, isn't it?
Bye.
All right. Not seeing any more comments, but thanks to everybody who was listening. Thanks to any replay viewers. Thanks for tuning in on a regular basis, and keep demanding honesty from medical professionals, and keep urging your state governors, state leadership to take action, to make contingency plans, because I don't think the federal government is really up to the task of helping you in this situation. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks, 23 Vets. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, David. Have a great day, you guys. Thanks, Julie.